Today we visit the Drake family, who live in a house that always smells faintly of citrus and roses. The family consisted of parents Winston and Callie, whose laughter filled the kitchen, and their three children. Sascha, the oldest, a daughter with a mind full of questions and dreams, and her younger twin brothers, Nicholas and Nathaniel, who arrived 4 years after Sascha, a pair of whirlwinds always tumbling through each day together. Listen, and after, please like, comment, and subscribe. Where are you from, beautiful listeners? I'd love to know the reach of my videos. Don't forget to drop a book emoji. Fans. Now, onto the story. From the outside, the Drakes seemed to be the kind of family that weathered the world hand in hand. Yet, if someone watched closely, they might notice a subtle difference in the way Winston and Callie approached their children, especially as the years passed. Reminders and assistance often bracketed the twins' days. A misplaced shoe found by their mother, a forgotten homework assignment quietly rescued by their father. Sascha, on the other hand, was expected to remember, to persist, and to find her own way. Sascha was born on a cool September evening, with a shock of dark hair and big brown eyes that seemed to take in the whole world at once. She was precocious from the start, speaking in full sentences before she was 2, and by the time she was 4, she could tie her shoelaces and recite the alphabet forward and backward. Winston and Callie, first-time parents, hovered over her crib, reading every parenting guide, measuring her feedings and sleep with a careful hand. They helped her with every small struggle, zipping up coats, untangling shoelaces, building block towers. They intervened at the first sign of frustration, offering gentle words and ready solutions. Sascha's early years were constructed within the cocoon of their watchfulness, a world where she was never far from a helping hand. When the twins arrived, a surprise that upended the Drake sense of order, the household expanded into joyful chaos. The boys, Nicholas and Nathaniel, were born premature, small, and fragile. For months, the Drakes' energies were poured into doctor's appointments, feedings, and the delicate work of nurturing 2 infants at once. During those years, still quite young herself, Sascha had to learn to do things for herself without help. She poured her cereal, packed her school bag, and quietly dressed herself each morning before leaving for school after her mother quickly and haphazardly combed her hair into a large puff on the top of her head. This happened every morning, like clockwork. She'd watch her parents, stretched thin by the needs of the twins, but still doted on them, and instinctively Sascha stepped back, determined not to add to their burdens, which she felt she was. It was in this moment, not out of choice, but of necessity, that Sascha's independence began to grow far beyond what her age required. As the years passed, the pattern set early in childhood became habit. The twins, perhaps because they had each other and a shared sense of mischief, seemed to need frequent reminders, gentle nudges, and a kind of guidance that Sascha had gradually outgrown. Winston and Callie, feeling the cumulative exhaustion of years spent in triage, naturally fell into the roles that the circumstances had written for them. But it was not just circumstance. Winston, who had been raised in a bustling household as the eldest of 5, recognized in Sascha something of himself. He remembered the pride of solving his own problems, the quiet strength in knowing no one would come running unless he called. Callie, an only child, had learned from childhood the value of resilience. They talked, sometimes in hushed voices after the house grew quiet, about the balance between supporting and smothering, about their desire to raise children who could stand on their own. They agreed, again and again, that Sascha's independence was not just a byproduct of necessity, but a gift. They watched as she learned to navigate disappointment, to seek out her answers, and to problem solve on her own and promptly. They saw, too, that the twins, more rambunctious, more dependent on each other, needed a different kind of scaffolding. And because Sascha was so independent, Winston and Callie devoted themselves to their sons. Parenting, Winston and Callie learned, was not about fairness in the sense of equal treatment, but about equity, giving each child what they needed to grow. They made mistakes, of course, sometimes erring too far on the side of independence or assistance. They never apologized for their parental approach, but Sascha, wise beyond her years, forgave them every time she felt ignored, and that usually happened after she called her grandmother and heard her soothing words and sage advice. For Sascha, the difference was not always easy to accept. As a child, she sometimes envied the way her brother's every failing was met with ready help. Their lost mittens were found, their accidental spills were cleaned for them, and their late-night fears soothed by a parent's immediate presence. Sascha, by contrast, was often left to find solutions on her own. One winter, a week before her 10th birthday, Sascha tried to build a snow fort alone in the backyard. The snow was heavy and wet, and her gloves quickly soaked through. She watched from a distance as Winston built an elaborate sled ramp for the twins, pausing to help them brush off snow or mend a broken sled. Sascha's fort crumbled again and again. Frustration built behind her eyes, but she bit her tongue to keep from crying and kept working. Grandma Ivy, her mother's mom, had watched Sascha for hours, attempting to solve the problem with the snow, while her son-in-law coddled the twins in between the ramp build and again when they produced the sled. Nathaniel and Nicholas' laughs echoed to the kitchen, where Ivy watched with a scowl. "Dear," she called to Callie, "why isn't Winston helping Sash, too?" "She doesn't need help, Mom." Callie sipped her tea. "She's fine." Ivy watched Sascha again and sighed. Reaching for her coat, she said she is not. "Put on your things, dear, and we'll help her." With a frown, Callie looked up from her phone. "Mom, it's 20 degrees outside and the Real feel is in the teens. And you want me to play in the snow in that weather?" Ivy shook her head and joined her granddaughter. She sat beside her on the cold ground and gently asked, "Why didn't you ask for help, Sash?" Sascha shrugged. "I thought everyone was busy with the boys again." Her grandmother paused, then said softly, "You're so good at figuring things out, Sascha. Sometimes we forget you might need us, too. But you can always ask your parents or me, even if I'm not here. You have my number, child. When you need me, call me." The moment stuck with Sascha through the years, a reminder of her own strength, but also her grandmother's faith in her. By the time Sascha was ready to enter high school, she wore her independence as a badge of honor. She managed her own schedule, advocated for herself with teachers, and set goals that extended far beyond the boundaries of their quiet neighborhood. The twins learned, in their own time, the lessons of perseverance and resilience that their sister knew by heart, always guided and supported by their parents during each stumble. On the day Sascha left for Princeton University, Winston and Callie stood at the door, watching her pack her things into a trailer that formerly belonged to her mother. Sascha felt $3,000 was a fair price for the 5-year-old luxury SUV, even though it took all of her savings to pay for it in full. If it wasn't for the virtual trunk party, she wouldn't have had enough money to travel across the country like she wanted for her first year of college. Sascha was determined to get to New Jersey to find work. Even though she didn't have to worry about tuition, she still had personal obligations, including personal care products, gas, and insurance. Her parents told her they could not help in the process, and the only thing they participated in was helping to fill out her enrollment forms. They admitted that they were too financially strained to offer anything. Grandma Ivy, insisting her granddaughter had a lifetime of bills to pay, was disappointed to hear that her daughter and son-in-law wouldn't help Sascha, and paid for Sascha's tuition in full for the entire 4 years by selling her home and moving into a smaller house with a friend. Grateful, Sascha promised to be diligent in her studies and to not disappoint her grandmother in any way. Grandma Ivy held Sascha's cheek and whispered, "I know you will, child. You never have, so why would you start now?" As the car pulled away, Callie asked, "She knows your brother expects her for dinner with his family on Sundays, since he's a professor at Princeton, right?" "She does." Winston took her hand. The dealer called. "Let's go pick up your new Mercedes." "Oh, good. I can't believe it took 8 months to build it to my specifications. 70,000 well spent, honey." The afternoon light filtered through the living room window, painting golden shapes on the carpet during the summer before Sascha's junior year at Princeton. In the hush that followed lunch, the house felt different, quieter, as if it was holding its breath. Sascha sat on the couch, her legs tucked beneath her, a book on botany in her hands. As she silently read, her parents, Winston and Callie, had been whispering in the kitchen for a while, their voices carrying a gentle gravity that Sascha could sense, even if she couldn't decipher the words. Her parents emerged with her twin brothers, Nicholas and Nathaniel, who were sweaty, and Nicholas was carrying a basketball. He shot it to Sascha, who caught it and made it roll under the table. Nicholas shook his head, noting her seriousness once again. As they grew, both boys noted the differences between the Drake children. The twins, both quick to smile and eager for adventure, seemed to glide through adolescence, buoyed by their parents' generosity and indulgence. Sascha, meanwhile, learned to savor solitude. She found solace in books, in the quiet of a garden or a library, and in the intricate beauty of plants. Sascha hated the changes that happened between her and her brothers, but she understood that things had to be different. They were twins, after all, and had their own unique bond. She was just their older sister, who was often expected to stop what she was doing to assist them in any way, especially when her parents were unavailable or occupied. Their parents' faces were masked by gentle concern, and the sight made their children's faces frown with curiosity. Callie sat beside Sascha, her hands clasped in her lap, while Winston took the armchair opposite them. The twins sat on the floor near their father's feet. "Sascha," Callie began, choosing her words with care. "Boys, we have something important to talk to you three about." Sasha's heart fluttered. She searched their faces, looking for clues, but all she saw was something heavy, like a shadow in their eyes. "It's about Grandma Ivy," Winston said softly. Sascha blinked. Ivy had told Sascha she was to enjoy her time off from her studies and not lounge around her home or that of her parents, but she would like to see her once a week for at least an hour. Sascha agreed, and they chose Sundays, and their time together was often longer than the allotted hour. Sascha accompanied her grandmother to church, and they would do something together, just the two of them, after services. The last time they'd sat together in the garden was only 4 days before, and as always, Sascha was looking forward to the next. In their last visit, Ivy's laughter floated like birdsong as she recounted stories from her childhood over sandwiches, pound cake, and tea. Sascha remembered the way her grandmother's hands, though wrinkled and marked by age, felt soft and warm. Sascha enjoyed every second they spent sitting on the backyard patio, under that colorful umbrella, surrounded by the flowers and trees that swayed in the breeze. "What about her, Mom?" Nicholas asked. "Isn't she still coming for dinner tonight?" Callie shook her head, tears glistening at the corners of her eyes while looking at Winston. "Kids," Winston continued, his voice gentle but steady. "Last night, Grandma Ivy passed away peacefully in her sleep." Sasha's world seemed to tilt, her breath catching in her chest. The words settled around her, heavy and final. She stared at her hands, not knowing what to say, and heard her brothers weeping. Callie said as the first tears began to fall, "It's okay to feel sad, children. We will all miss her very much. My mother loved you all with every inch of her heart." For a long while, the family sat together, letting the silence fill the space between them, broken only by Sasha's quiet sobs and her parents' soft reassurances with the boys. Winston sighed. "We have memories, stories, and all the love she gave us. In those ways, she's still with us. And sometimes, when you feel the sun on your face or smell her favorite flowers, you might remember her and feel close to her again." Callie nodded, brushing away her own tears. "Grandma Ivy wanted you to remember the good times like the garden picnics, the bedtime stories, and her silly songs. She believed that love never really leaves us." Sascha leaned to her mother, her sorrow beginning to overwhelm her, but her mother stood to comfort her brothers. Sascha held a throw pillow to her chest and watched her parents comfort Nicholas and Nathaniel, wishing she could call her grandmother for support. She longed to hear Ivy Addison Trent's voice once more and knew she'd miss her grandmother every day of her life. As the days passed, the family moved through their grief together, but Sascha seemed to be on her own with her emotions. There were moments of laughter as Sascha remembered Ivy's quirky sayings, and quiet evenings when tears would come unexpectedly. Her life felt emptier without her weekly visits, but Sascha discovered comfort in the rituals they kept alive. Tending to the garden, baking her grandmother's favorite lemon cake, reading her old, dog-eared books. 11 days after Ivy's passing, Winston and Callie gathered Sascha and the twins in the living room once again when mourners left their home. "There's something we need to talk about," Winston began, a gentle seriousness in his tone. Grandma Ivy loved you all very much, and she wanted to make sure our family was looked after to a degree. Callie smiled softly. Before she died, Grandma made some plans. She left us things that were important to her. Some are memories, like her scrapbook and her garden tools. Others are things that can help us, like some money she saved over the years. She wanted us to use these gifts to take care of ourselves and remember her in special ways. Sascha thought about the old teapot Ivy used for every family get-together, about the faded photo albums filled with smiles and adventures. Winston continued, Grandma left a letter for you, Sascha. She wrote it the day you left for your first year of college, so she could tell you how much you meant to her. Boys, you also have one each. Callie handed Sascha a cream-colored envelope, the handwriting unmistakably Ivy's, looping, elegant, warm. With trembling hands, Sascha opened the letter. My darling Sascha, it began, if you are reading this, it means I have moved on to the next great adventure. I want you to remember our times together, and I hope you will always find joy in the simple things, a sunny day, a good book, a loving family. I am leaving you a little something to help you along your own journey. Use it to find happiness, to learn, and to share kindness with the world. Sascha read the words over and over, her tears falling anew. But this time they were mixed with a sense of peace. Callie handed Sascha a worn notebook full of tips and tricks for raising a perfect garden of edibles and flowers. Sascha embraced it and cried harder. Winston and Callie explained that part of Ivy's gift was meant for Sascha's future, her education, her dreams, her love of the earth, and all the miracles it could produce. They encouraged her to honor her grandmother's wishes, not just by using what had been left behind, but by living with generosity, curiosity, and love. Using Ivy's tools and suggestions, the family planted new flowers in the garden, a living reminder of Ivy's enduring presence. Every spring, when the bush bloomed, Sascha vowed she would sit beside it and remember the stories her grandmother had shaped her life with and the gentle wisdom and boundless love. Sascha came to understand that loss and inheritance were woven together, that saying goodbye was hard, but what her grandmother left behind was more than keepsakes. It was a legacy of compassion, resilience, and the quiet courage to keep moving forward, nourished by memory and hope. The sun would set and rise again, and in the gentle rhythm of family life, Sascha clutched her grandmother's book and found a way to carry her grandmother's light with her wherever she went. Remembering her grandmother's words and gifts, Sascha discovered botany, falling in love with the way life persisted and adapted, even in the smallest sprout. Her passion became her career. She would often lose herself for hours in greenhouses or hiking far beyond the city, her notebooks filled with sketches and Latin names. While her parents praised her unique interests, she always felt a subtle undercurrent of bemusement, as if they were waiting for her to outgrow what they called hobbies and settle into a more Drake-approved profession. It was at a summer botanical lecture that a 20-year-old Sascha met a 24-year-old John, who was in town for a seminar for small business owners. He was gentle, with a dry humor and a kindness that ran deep. Their partnership was quiet but fierce, a steady flame rather than a spark. For 8 years, they built a life together, simple, rich in meaning, and shared with a close circle of friends who valued authenticity above status. Over the years, the Drake household changed. The family home remained a hub, but the dynamics shifted as the twins moved through university and into adulthood. Winston and Callie, seeing how expensive city living had become, purchased a 2-story condo for Nicholas and Nathaniel. The twins delighted in their new independence, filling their days with parties and their social feeds with curated glimpses of downtown Chicago life. When Sascha visited, she was greeted warmly but sensed an invisible divide, a new world in which she was treated as a visitor, not a family member. And this was also noted when she finally introduced John to her parents. Her own apartment, though modest and far from trendy, was a sanctuary she had made herself. She worked 2 jobs while finishing her education and rarely asked for help, a fact her parents noted with a mix of pride and relief. Still, Sascha cherished her family, until the question of her wedding forced old tensions into the open. John's proposal was a surprise. It happened on a golden autumn evening in a quiet park, laughter echoing among the falling leaves. He told her that he knew she was his one a month after their meeting, but had waited to propose for him to be work stable and ready for kids. He wanted to start trying to conceive on the honeymoon. Sascha said yes to it all without hesitation. They imagined a wedding that reflected their values, an intimate gathering under blossoming trees in the spring, music played by friends, hand-picked wildflowers, and homemade foods. They wanted to keep things simple and meaningful. When Sascha told her parents of the engagement, she expected delight at already settling on a date. Instead, she was met with a flurry of questions. Callie's concern was palpable. Winston's discomfort, less so but still there. Why so soon? John only asked for your hand a week ago. And why is the venue so small? Have you thought about what people will think? You're approaching 30, dear, Callie said, her tone edged with disbelief. Most women your age are well settled by now. Shouldn't you have discussed this with us before making any plans? Sascha hesitated, then replied, John and I have been together for years, and we want to start having children soon after we're married, while we pool our savings to buy a home to raise them in. We just want a small ceremony, nothing extravagant. But if you're still planning to help, as you did with the twins' apartment, it would mean a lot. We only need $5,000 to go toward things like the venue, caterers, and our honeymoon. John and I already have 7, and we're going to ask his parents for help, too, this weekend. Sascha, dear, why are you asking for help? If you can't afford the simple wedding you're planning, maybe you should elope and have a little dinner somewhere. Winston cleared his throat. It's not that we don't want to support you, Sash, but things are tight. Nicholas and Nathaniel's place. Well, it was a significant investment. Besides, you're so independent. We've always assumed that no matter the task, you'd manage. It was a conversation that left Sascha hollow. How is it that you're complaining about helping with my wedding? Yet you found the money to buy the boys a home outright? Callie scowled. Whatever we do with our money is our business, child. How dare you question the way we spend it? And as I said, Winston growled, that condo is an investment. When the boys marry and settle, do you know how much of a return we're going to get? What's the return on helping to pay for your wedding, Sascha Ivy? My happiness, Sascha sighed. Isn't that worth anything to either of you? With a haunting glare, Callie answered, find it on your own, as you always have and without our input. Sascha felt as though she'd been physically struck. She turned and left them, wanting to cry, but she held it all in. She returned home feeling as if she'd overstepped some invisible line, and the words her mother used. Elope? Little dinner? When John came home, Sascha sobbed in his arms, asking him to explain how she overstepped with her parents. He couldn't. John felt it was a reasonable request to ask for help with their only daughter's wedding. 1 month later, Sascha's world shifted again when a formal letter arrived at her apartment, cold, precise, and unmistakably legal. Her parents would not help pay for the wedding. Worse, they demanded repayment for what they called excessive familial investments, which meant the sum of every lesson, every camp, every moment of parental support, itemized as if her entire upbringing had been a debt waiting to be called in. Sascha stared at the letter, dumbfounded. How could they do such a thing? Placing a price tag on something so trivial as child-rearing costs. Did she ask to be born? Did she ever ask her parents for more than what was reasonable in her childhood or since? Did they do the same to the twins? And why would they purchase their condo if it would cause them financial strain? And why force only her to pay them, and for such an absurd amount? Where would Sascha ever get $1 million, let alone 5? Nicholas called that night, voice trembling. We had no idea Mom and Dad were planning this, and they didn't serve us. We didn't know anything until they shared at dinner because Mom appeared tense. Her dad's siblings stayed neutral, even her Uncle Ben, with whom she shared meals during her years at Princeton. All he would say was that he hoped that they would somehow come to a peaceful truce, and soon. The community was abuzz. Most took Sascha's side, aghast at the Drake's actions. Others muttered about family duty and a child should know one's place. The local press, always hungry for a story tinged with scandal, reported Drake family rift. Daughter sued over wedding funds. Sascha found herself at the center of a storm she never wanted. Friends rallied around her. John, steadfast, became her anchor. This isn't about money, he told her. It's about control. Where do they think you're going to get that money from if they win? My family doesn't have $5 million to spare, but we'll help in any and every way possible. She was never so grateful to have him by her side. With guidance from Ruth Sanders, her tenacious lawyer, Sascha prepared her defense. She gathered evidence of her independence, of promises made and expectations set by her parents. She reflected on every milestone, every moment when she'd been told she was different, strong, the responsible one. At their first meeting, Ruth asked Sascha if she wanted to continue or settle. Hurt, Sascha whispered to her attorney, "I didn't ask to be born. I couldn't take care of myself before I had my first job at 16, which they forbade me from doing before that age, and I had to pay them rent starting with my first paycheck. I just wanted a little help with paying for my wedding, which was of far less ask than a roof over my head." Ruth nodded. "Then we move forward with the countersuit. You should not have to pay my fees for this frivolity." Sascha nodded and sighed. "I need you to be beyond good with this, Ruth. I have no idea where they think I'll get $5,000, let alone $5 million. Ruth watched Sascha's nervous expression and asked, "Why would they sue for that sum when your only income is from your research job? Are you hiding something from me? Sascha? Tell me now, because I'm representing you on contingency, and I don't have to do that for any client." "I swear I'm not," Sascha insisted. "I can let you see my tax forms, if that will ease you." "Fine," Ruth conceded. "But someone is hiding something, and believe me, I will find out whatever it is." Sascha nodded, hoping that was the case. The judge, an older man with tired eyes, listened patiently as both sides presented their case. Ronald Banks, the Drake's attorney, cited the cost of child rearing, the precedent set by their support of the twins, and the need for equity. He called Callie to the witness stand, and she insisted that everything her lawyer said in his opening statement and her testimony from his questions was true. She didn't have an answer as to why they chose to sue Sascha and not Nathaniel and Nicholas, but Callie was truthful about supporting the twins more than their daughter because they needed the help and guidance. Sascha was always independent and needed less care from either parent. Callie was dismissed from the stand, and Winston sat there next. He, too, described how his sons needed help and had since their birth, but Sascha was always independent and needed only minimal guidance. He also claimed she didn't want help with anything, including tuition to obtain her master's degree in botany. Sascha could have been a doctor by now and worked in a clinic or hospital instead of becoming a sitter for plants. But I suppose that's due to the influence of my late mother-in-law. Then why do you feel Dr. Drake owes you, Mr. Drake? Even though we gave Sascha less attention, we still provided extras for her, including, but not limited to, the extra year she was at home before going to school. See, her birth date prevented her from starting at age 5. Anyone born after August 31st must start school the following year. So Sascha was 6 when she started kindergarten, and we homeschooled her to make sure she knew enough when she started. Mr. Drake, Ruth called when it was her turn. Does the fact that it was not Sascha's fault that her birth date is September 19th and not August 19th mean anything? Winston shrugged. We know that it was not her fault when she was conceived, but still, having her home that extra year cost us a tremendous amount of money. I see. And the fact that you refused to help her pay for her higher education doesn't level the field. I don't believe it does, but you do believe that an extra year at home warrants a $5 million payout. It was filed for that and all the other extras we gave our daughter. Winston was dismissed after Ruth declared she had no further questions, but reserved the right to recall Winston. Mr. Banks rested, and Ruth called Sascha to the stand and asked for her side of the story. I paid my parents' rent when I was 16 and continued to do so until I left for college at Princeton University. Since my first paycheck, my parents have paid for nothing for me, including prom, graduations, and personal care. My late grandmother paid for my undergraduate studies, but I decided to pursue my master's degree, and so I had to get student loans. I made all the payments myself, and sometimes tripled the principal when I finally got a job. I live in a studio apartment with a roommate, and since graduating from college, I have only asked for assistance twice, and it was for groceries when I had an unexpected expense with my 14-year-old car. For my wedding, I planned for it to be small, and my fiancé and I planned to use our savings, but we still came up short, so I went to my parents and asked them to make up the difference. In fairness, even though it's not traditional, we also asked his parents, and they agreed to help us. What I asked for was nowhere near the cost of a condo. Dr. Drake, Ruth sighed. What about your brothers? Are your parents helping them? Sascha noted the confused expressions on her parents' faces, finally confirming to her that they had no clue she held a doctorate. She shouldn't be surprised. Neither ever listened to her nor attended any of her commencements. I don't think my brothers have a clue as to what rent, utilities, and groceries cost, yet I don't see them sitting here with me being sued for the cost of their upbringing. And to this day, yes, Mr. and Mrs. Drake continue to provide for their other 2 college graduates. What exactly do you do, Dr. Drake? I am a researcher for a major pharmaceutical company, and my team is working to find alternative methods for pain relief that can replace the use of harmful steroids and addictive medications. We are close, and I believe we will have a definitive formula before the end of the decade, if I am not called away from my work for frivolous court appearances. And what is your current salary? Currently, I make $81,000 a year. That's nowhere near $5 million. How long have you been a researcher? For years, and I'm contracted at that rate for another 2 years, and if that is renewed, I still won't be near $5 million. In the event you lose this case, Ruth sighed, how will you pay the fine? Sascha sighed hard and replied, through a wish and several prayers, possibly a lucky lottery ticket that was bought on the right night. Sascha held her own against Mr. Banks, who used several tactics, but he couldn't rile her, and with frustration, he declared he had no more questions. Finally, she was dismissed, and Ruth recalled Winston. Mr. Drake, Ruth began, did you know your daughter was a doctor? No, he answered quietly, looking at the floor. Why not, Mr. Drake? I don't know. Mr. Drake, what did your sons go through higher learning to achieve? Winston silently glared at Ruth and said, Nicholas holds a master's in finance. Nathaniel holds a master's in political science. And your daughter? I don't know. Would it surprise you to learn that Sascha Ivy Drake, your firstborn child and only daughter, holds a PhD in plant biology? Winston Drake said nothing. How did you not know that Dr. Drake has a PhD, Mr. Drake? Didn't you, or anyone in your immediate family, attend either of her graduations? Did you not hear her say on the stand that she was actually a doctor after you attempted to berate her career choice? Still, Winston had nothing to say. Mr. Drake, with all that education under her belt, did it ever occur to you or your wife that your daughter would have amassed debt so large that she would have to double, possibly triple, her payments for the student loans? I suppose. And you didn't help her at least once? Listen, Miss Allen. Sascha chose to further her education with an adult mind, so what we did after the first 4 years of college was enough. Undergraduate studies were all we were required to do. And did you, Mr. Drake? Approximately, how much did you and your wife spend on Dr. Drake's undergraduate studies? My mother-in-law paid for those years. How? She sold her home and moved in with a friend from church. So you're telling the court that you did nothing for Sascha and left it up to a senior citizen to take care of a child you chose to put on the planet? We sent her $20 once or twice when she asked for it. Sascha has always been independent and wanted to do things her way and in her terms. She'd been that way since the twins were born. I have a sinking suspicion that you made her that way by ignoring her once you had your sons. Your Honor, Mr. Banks shouted. I'll withdraw, Ruth murmured. The judge ordered to have the comment be stricken from the record. Now, let's discuss your in-laws, Mr. Drake, specifically your wife's father. Okay, what about him? What did he do for a living? Nicholas Nathaniel Trent was a grocer. He died when Sascha was 1, and when he became sick after I married my wife, he sold the business to a man in California. I see. And what were his stores called? A&T Finer Foods. A&T. What did those initials stand for? Addison and Trent. Why those names? The stores were started by my in-laws' parents, whose last names were Addison and Trent. They passed them to their kids when they retired, and my father-in-law ran all 15 stores until his cancer diagnosis. He sold up, and that was the end of that, Miss Allen. And all the profit from that sale went to his treatment? No, it went to the care of his widow and daughter. Can you recall the final amount? Winston sat still, his lips tight. Did you not hear the question? Ruth asked, moving to the table. Winston still didn't answer. Ruth smirked. Mr. Drake, I have here a copy of the contract between Alan Mitchell and Nicholas Trent, which states that Mr. Mitchell intended to combine his stores with A&T and rename them. This contract, labeled Defense Exhibit C, was forwarded to your attorney 10 days ago, and I'd like to know if he has discussed the contents with you. Or perhaps you already know and simply forgotten. Winston was silent again. Ruth flipped through the pages. On page 6, the agreed price is listed as $32 million. In his personal records, which we obtained from the accounting firm Mr. Trent used, your father-in-law took home $21 million after fees for his attorneys, accounts, and taxes. Now, how much was used toward his care? Sascha stared at her father, then her mother, who had held her mouth in shock. Sascha was feeling the same way. No one had ever said anything about millions, and it made Sasha's heart and blood feel frozen with emotions she hadn't felt since the day Grandma Ivy died. Mr. Drake, if you won't answer, I can have Mr. Lyons, a senior accountant at Mr. Trent's former firm, take the stand. He's here today and ready to explain it all. And yes, he is on our witness list. Winston inhaled and angrily replied. $2 million was put aside for Nick's care. Another $1 million went toward buying a forever home for him and his wife. We had a lavish wedding, but I have no idea how much he spent. Another $1 million went to buying and furnishing a home for my wife and me, and we moved in when we returned from our honeymoon, also paid by Nick. He paid to repair and furnish the entire 5-bedroom place, gave our utility companies an unknown amount, and paid for the rest of both our educations. What are the occupations of you and your wife, Mr. Drake? Callie has a BA in education. I hold a master's and am a high school principal. That's nice, but it still doesn't add up to $21 million, Mr. Drake. At his death, they will read that the remaining money was split 4 ways, which were $5 million to his widow, Ivy Addison Trent, $5 million to his daughter, Callie and Trent Drake, $1 million to various charities. That's only 11, Mr. Drake. With my calculations, there's roughly $4 million missing. Where was the rest of the money left to? Winston Drake gripped the chair he was sitting in and snarled. $5 million was left in a trust that was invested over time. And the recipient? Sascha Ivy Drake, on her 30th birthday. The courtroom gasped and stared at Sascha, who had paled and stared in disbelief. What happened to the money left to your wife? We spent it on upgrades, cars, bills, vacations, and the care of all of our children and the twins' education. And your mother-in-law's will? How much did she have left? Almost $4 million. What did she stipulate? For her money to go to the education of all her grandchildren first, and the rest was to be placed in interest-bearing accounts for the twins when they reached 30. Everyone in the courtroom heard Sascha's hard gasp of surprise. She turned to her fiancé, and his eyes were as wide and shocked as hers. Do you have any idea how much is in that trust now, Mr. Drake? Last you heard, what, Mr. Drake? Ruth prodded. 14 and change. Million, Sascha screeched. Ruth raised her brow at the now sullen Winston Drake. Million, Winston confirmed. Sascha stood abruptly and gasped. Your Honor, I need, like a minute. Ruth hurriedly said, Your Honor, the defense requests a 10. No, 20 minutes, Your Honor, Ruth amended when she studied her client's face. Please. Ruth asked Sascha in the ladies' room. You honestly had no idea about the money, right? Look at my face, Ruth, Sascha snapped. I told you before that I wasn't hiding anything. After Ruth and John calmed Sascha, the trial continued, but with a different feel. At the end, the Drakes' lawyers' closing argument included notes of entitlement and words of parents taking care of their children in an equal manner and needed to be cared for now, citing ailments and unexpected bills that Winston and Callie Drake had now acquired and felt their daughter would be selfish when she received her inheritance. When Ruth stood to give her closing argument, She told of the inequalities and unfairness Sascha Ivy Drake experienced compared to her brothers from their birth, and of hidden assets that were just now being addressed because her client, who was in the dark about it all, was about to come into her inheritance. The Drakes, Ruth argued, were only suing now because they knew of the money and wanted to grab a share before it was released to Sascha. I believe, Your Honor, that Dr. Drake, being the loving and giving being she is, would have been generous with her parents had they not struck in this cold, calculated manner and offered them security from her inheritance. 2 days later, the judge looked weary as he delivered his verdict. Families are complicated, and tradition is not law. You cannot retroactively charge your child for being raised and not expect the same recompense from the others, nor can you wield financial support as a means of control. He dismissed their case with prejudice. But in the matter of the countersuit, I hereby rule that Mr. and Mrs. Drake pay 99% of Dr. Drake's legal fees and nothing more. Off the record, let this judgment sink into your heads, Mr. and Mrs. Drake, and perhaps teach you that when you chose to have children, their births were not accompanied by a price tag. I advise that you make your twin sons learn to be dependent and stop singling out the one child, who seems to have learned to do that on her own. Teach your boys what your daughter had to learn on her own, and well before their 30th birthdays. I urge you all to speak, to listen, and if possible, to forgive. The legal battle left its mark. Family gatherings became strained, the old warmth replaced with something brittle because Sascha felt she could not be in the same room as her parents after Callie sent a card. No return address, only a line in her careful script, I only wish you the best in life. Spend my father's money carefully. Sascha ripped it into several pieces after showing it to John. The twins came to the wedding, subdued but supportive, unsure how to bridge the gap that had opened between them. They were there and wished her the best, after saying they felt conflicted at how their parents handled the money and the lawsuit. They wanted their family's dynamic back, but knew that was not possible in the moment, especially with their parents being livid at having to pay her attorney, which totaled almost $20,000. Sascha had only asked for $5,000. Sascha had learned that her parents paid for the twins' education with the funds allocated, but had upped the amount needed. The price of college was tripled, and they walked away with almost $1 million, mainly because they had claimed they were paying Sascha's education fees and livelihood as well as the twins. Sascha was incensed at the nerve. What angered her most was that they used her grandmother's receipts to claim that money after Ivy's death. Sascha vowed that she would never forget the way they tinged her grandmother's memory and efforts with their mess. Sascha giggled at knowing that her grandmother's friend was actually a live-in caregiver who inherited the smaller home Ivy lived in until her death. She didn't need to sell the 5-bedroom colonial her mother was raised in. Ivy was just ready for a smaller place and chose the 3-bedroom ranch house a mile away. John deduced that the reason Sascha was the only beneficiary of her grandfather's will was because she was the only child her parents had at the time of her grandfather's death. Wanting fairness, Ivy left the twins her cash, only to have Winston and Callie use it for their own wants and needs. She learned that her parents wanted that $5 million to replace the twins' inheritance and have some leftover for them. Sascha decided that since the twins held a 2-story condo in downtown Chicago, mortgage-free, she would only gift them on occasions. The twins decided to sell the property and split the proceeds. They were finally ready to live apart after Nicholas became engaged to his college sweetie. John and Sascha held the wedding they wanted. After both signed prenuptial agreements and with the help of friends and John's family, and Sascha deeply felt the absence of her parents. The bride and groom exchanged vows at an exclusive country club, surrounded by people who cherished them for who they were. The air was filled with music and laughter, the smell of fresh-cut grass and wildflowers, and the joy of a union built on choice and love. As Sascha walked down the aisle, sunlight dappling through green leaves, she felt lighter than she had in years. She no longer carried the burden of her parents' expectations and wants. She was her own person, living by her own values and forging a new tradition with every step, with a wonderful, caring man at her side. Despite all the freedom and light she was feeling, Sascha still missed seeing her parents at her wedding, especially having her father escort her down the aisle. Nicholas and Nathaniel volunteered to fill in, but with a heavy heart, Sascha chose to do that walk alone. In the moment where she joined her groom under a blossoming Japanese cherry blossom tree, amid the gentle hush, the hopeful faces, and the promise of new beginnings, Sascha released most of her anguish and, grinning big at John Edward Choi, she finally understood that family is more than obligation. Sometimes it is the people who show up, who listen, who help you become who you were always meant to be. And sometimes it is the courage to stand alone so that one day you can welcome others to join you, not out of duty, but out of genuine, unconditional love. Sascha forged ahead with life after her adventurous week-long honeymoon with John, who was a pillar of strength for her. She poured herself into her work, strengthened friendships, and tried, sometimes successfully, to convince herself that she no longer needed her parents' approval or presence. But there were moments, late at night, when the ache of estrangement surfaced. She thought about calling, about writing, but the fear of rejection kept her silent. 3 months after their May wedding, John and Sascha found a beautiful rehab 4-bedroom, 2.5-bathroom colonial home that reminded Sascha of Grandma Ivy's home, and they loved everything about it, except the paint choices. The newlyweds painted the kitchen a muted yellow that was also used in the half-bath and mudroom. The master bedroom was painted gray to complement the black set given by John's parents as a wedding gift. The living and dining areas were painted tan, and the deep, rich brown furniture pieces meshed well with it, and Sascha had to admit that their choices were simply awesome. She and John had eerily similar tastes. As they started painting the downstairs guest room in a sedate blue color, Sascha suddenly felt sick. She released her lunch in the half-bath and thought she was going to die. John entered with a bottle of ginger ale and patted her neck and forehead with a cool, damp towel. "I knew it," he whispered as she rinsed her mouth. Sascha swallowed the soda and sighed. "Knew what, Jay?" "Babe, I think you're pregnant." She coughed mid-gulp and stared at her husband of 10 months. "Pregnant? How?" John raised a brow and laughed. "Damn it, I know how, but how?" She stared at her reflection. "I mean, I'm not on the pill anymore, and we've been going at it regularly, sure. But how?" "Because God said it was time." Sascha held her mouth and giggled at his happy expression. "How did you know?" "The last 2 times we've gone shopping. You didn't buy your monthly supplies." She nodded, recalling. "I haven't needed them," Sascha whispered in wonder. "I didn't even notice my cycle was missing. I did feel different, though. Still do. Should we go buy a test?" John excitedly reached into a drawer that held the bathroom supplies and handed his wife a white box. He kissed her cheek and left her alone. Sascha giggled at his speed. They stared at that positive result for hours, both excited and scared at the same time. "Would you mind if I moved to part-time after the baby comes, John? I wouldn't care if you quit altogether. Maybe do something with botany at home while you care for the baby. I make enough for us to be comfortable in our home, and you have your inheritance. And let's not forget that this home is paid for, and we don't need to work like demons to maintain it. We'll be good, no matter what you decide, babe." Sascha kissed her husband and smiled. "Should we call your parents now?" John laughed. "Let's make an appointment for the OB first, my love." Sascha happily did, and both were happy that there was an opening on the following Tuesday morning. After the call ended, they decided that Sascha would work until she couldn't anymore and then go on leave, where she would decide what to do about her job. "I'd like to wait until you're in your 2nd trimester before we tell my parents. I think both will be happy, as will Mom's parents. My dad will probably go insane at the news." John's parents were both traditional in their respective cultures. His dad was Korean and his mom was African American, and he admitted to Sascha that his upbringing sometimes caused strife in the vast differences. "But," John said with a smile, "we'll decide what we want with our children and we'll only listen to suggestions. Final choice is ours." "Okay," Sascha agreed sadly. "I don't think we have to worry about that with my parents." John held his wife and sighed. "Whenever you want to talk to them again, I'll be at your side. Just let me know when you're ready." Sascha had nothing to say to that, as she was still unsure if she wanted to open that door. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. For Callie and Winston, the quiet was both a calm and a torment. They told themselves they had done the right thing, that boundaries were necessary. Yet, in the privacy of their evenings, both sometimes wondered if their wanted cost them too much. When Nicholas and Nathaniel started talking to their parents again, they told them about Sascha's wedding and showed them pictures of that day on their phones. Nicholas even showed a video of Sascha walking down the aisle alone, and it made Winston Drake shed a few tears at missing the only opportunity to walk his daughter to her groom. Still, out of fear of rejection, neither parent of Sascha Ivy Drake Choi would make the move to reconcile with their daughter. On a warm June afternoon, a mutual acquaintance, Sascha's longtime friend, Liesl, ran into Callie in a downtown store. Liesl, unaware the rift still existed, congratulated Callie on the big news. The confusion on Callie's face was genuine. She had no idea what Liesl was talking about. Liesl blushed and quickly apologized, but the seed was planted. That evening, shaken and curious, Callie scoured social media for clues. There it was, in a softly lit photograph. Sascha, smiling, one hand resting on her rounded belly that was painted like a pumpkin. Coming in October, the caption read. Callie screamed for Winston to join her, and together they stared at the image. The lawsuit, the silence, the pride, all of it paled in comparison to the tidal wave of emotion the photograph unleashed. Their daughter was pregnant. They were going to be grandparents. The news sent shockwaves through the Drakes' orderly world. Anger and disappointment, so long cultivated, mixed with longing and regret. Memories flooded back. Callie remembered Sascha as a child, her laughter echoing through their backyard. Winston thought about all the things he wished he'd said and done. Together, they finally admitted how much they had ignored her after the surprise arrival of their twins, and now, they had no idea what to do with that revelation. The idea that a new life was on its way forced both parents to confront uncomfortable questions. Did their grievances matter now? Would they let pride rob them of the chance to know their grandchild? The lawsuit, so significant before, now felt small, diminished beside the enormity of family and legacy. It was also unwarranted. They both realized, possibly too late, that it was something they should never have done, because that lawsuit came from their greed. Reaching out was not easy. Callie drafted half a dozen letters, each starting with "We're sorry," but tore them up before finishing. Winston hovered by the phone, rehearsing what he might say if Sascha answered. They tried to recruit their sons to help, to be mediators, but neither would do so. They were still reeling over their parents' treatment of Sascha and decided that was a road the two of them would travel alone. Plus, neither had the time, not knowing how long that road would be. Their party days were now over. Both were working full-time, and Nicholas was planning his wedding, scheduled for New Year's Eve. In their 26th year, Nathaniel and Nicholas had finally grown up and became responsible adults. After much hesitation, Callie sent a message on IG. It was brief and imperfect. "We saw your news. Congratulations. If you'd like to talk, we're here. We'd love to hear from you and know that we're ready to formally apologize." Hours passed. Days. Sascha read the message again and again, her emotions a tangle of hope and apprehension. Could she forgive? Should she? She showed the message to John, who shrugged. "Whatever you want to do, babe," he promised and kissed her head. It was a Sunday afternoon when Sascha's cell went off and her mother's name appeared on the screen. Sascha's voice was tentative, her greeting swift. There were tears and apologies from her mother, words long held back finally tumbling out. Sascha cried too, her relief palpable. Winston, listening nearby, felt the first true hope he'd felt in months. He also apologized with strong, determined words. They agreed to meet at a cafe halfway between their homes. It was awkward at first, the conversation laden with the weight of old wounds, until Sascha spoke candidly of her hurt, and her parents listened without interruption. Callie apologized again for the lawsuit, for letting things spiral so far. Winston promised that he would do better with his own apology. But gradually, as they spoke of the baby and nursery colors, of hopes and fears, the tension began to crumble. The meeting ended well, with Callie and Winston assuring that they wanted to be involved in the journey with Sascha and John whenever they were ready to let them in, and they promised to never discuss money with or around Sascha. Pregnancy, with its anticipation and uncertainty, became a bridge. Sascha invited her parents to an ultrasound appointment. They watched, awestruck, as the grainy image on the monitor fluttered with life, with the promise of a new beginning. Family, after all, is rarely as simple as we wish it to be. It is a shifting landscape of memory, loyalty, and regret. The lawsuit would not be forgotten. There were still unresolved and complicated feelings that Sascha felt would never go away. She could forgive, and the arrival of a new generation offered all of them a chance to have a better future as a family. As Sascha's due date approached, the Drakes became regular visitors. Winston and John painted the nursery together, while Dasham, John's father, put together the furniture with Nicholas and Nathaniel, while John's mother, Cheryl, and Callie washed the baby's clothes and blankets. After John and Sascha attended birthing classes, they all met for lunch, learning to laugh again. Grandparenthood humbled Callie and Winston, making them realize that even the deepest wounds can, with patience and vulnerability, begin to heal. The day Sascha gave birth, Callie and Winston waited anxiously in the hospital corridor with Dasham and Cheryl. John's two younger sisters flew in and, along with Nicholas and Nathaniel, helped them keep calm. When they were finally allowed to meet their grandchild, the magnitude of the moment washed over them. Callie wept as she cradled the baby, whispering promises of love and protection with Cheryl at her side. John took a video and several pictures of the three of them, and then with the grandfathers, followed by the aunts and uncles. The afternoon they were cleared to go home. All first wanted to know was the baby's name. Slapping both of the shoulders of Nicholas and Nathaniel, John announced, "My boy's name comes from his elders, Daewin John Choi. Day is from my dad, Win is from yours, and John is from me." No one could hold back tears. Sascha's heart felt full, finally, and she held her son tighter to her body, grateful he was able to bring her family back together. She felt truly blessed, wiser, and loved. The lawsuit filed by Callie and Winston Drake against their only daughter, Sascha, was a decision they realized too late stemmed from greed, and they should not have entertained the thought, let alone pursued it. After apologies and forgiveness were given, they vowed to never treat their children differently again and respect them all as the individuals and adults they now were. The story of the Drakes and their daughter reminds us that no family is free from conflict or heartbreak. It also celebrates the strength of love and the healing power of new beginnings. When past wounds clash with a child's hope, priorities change, and the chance for reconciliation arises. The journey of healing is rarely easy, but as the Drakes discovered, it's never too late to ask forgiveness and to allow a new life to mend what once seemed permanently broken. This story follows Sascha and her family as they navigate the aftermath of a painful lawsuit filed by her parents, Callie and Winston Drake, against their only daughter. Against the backdrop of lingering hurt and regret, Sascha's pregnancy becomes a catalyst for healing, gradually drawing the fractured family together. Through shared preparations for the baby's arrival, old wounds are confronted and slowly mended, as each family member learns the value of forgiveness and the importance of embracing new beginnings. The birth of Sascha's child, named to honor both sides of the family, marks a turning point, rekindling love, humility, and hope, and ultimately offering the Drakes a second chance to rebuild their bonds and honor each other's individuality. This is a story of reconciliation, the enduring strength of family, and the power of a new life healing past pain.